The auditorium had gone quiet for only a breath before the sound of a crutch sliding across the stage cut through it like glass. It spun, struck the wall, and fell flat with a metallic crack. Ethan Hale's body hit the wood a moment later, his graduation gown tangled, his mortarboard slipping over his eyes. The impact wasn't what silenced the room. It was the sight of him struggling to rise, and the way Tyler Grant's polished shoe was still half extended from the trip. The silence broke into laughter. Not everyone laughed, but enough did for the sound to carry. Short bursts at first, then longer, louder, crueler. "Watch your step, Hale. Money can't buy legs. CEO's baby needs training wheels." Each voice fed the next. Students twisted in their seats, phones lifted high, record icons pulsing on their screens. A girl in the second row covered her mouth, not out of sympathy but to hide a grin. Ethan's palms pressed into the floor, searching for balance. His leg ached, not broken but jarred, and the sound of the laughter pressed harder than the pain. He raised his head just enough to see Tyler's smirk. No apology. No shame. Just that sharp grin, as if hurting him was a game that came with applause. Teachers shifted uncomfortably near the wings, but none moved. The principal cleared his throat into the microphone. His voice was flat, routine, as though announcing weather. "Let's continue." Everyone back to places. The message was clear. This was not worth pausing for. Ethan reached for his crutch, but it was out of reach, near the edge of the stage. His fingers brushed air. The laughter swelled again when he crawled the last few feet, gown dragging. Someone clapped slowly, mockingly, as if the effort were performance. When his hand finally closed around the handle, he gripped it so tight his knuckles whitened. He pulled himself up, chest heaving. He looked across rows of faces, hundreds of them, yet not one offered him a hand. Many turned away, pretending sudden focus on their programs, as though by looking elsewhere they could erase what had happened. That denial cut deeper than Tyler's kick. This was supposed to be rehearsal for a celebration, his graduation, his moment to step into a future his mother had dreamed for him. Instead, it was proof he was tolerated only as long as he stayed small and silent. He walked back to his seat. Each tap of the crutch, a harsh metronome. His eyes caught fragments. A teacher adjusting her glasses without meeting his gaze. Two boys replaying the trip on their phone screens. A group of girls whispering with eyes darting toward him. Their whispers weren't quiet enough. Crippled prince. Charity case with money behind him. Doesn't even belong here. He lowered himself into the chair. His hand slipped into his pocket and touched the small bracelet that had once belonged to his mother. Metal against skin, she used to tell him. Strength isn't about who claps for you, Ethan. It's about standing when nobody does. The memory steadied him, but only for a moment. The ceremony rehearsal continued. Names were called, students lined up, instructions repeated. For everyone else, time moved forward. For Ethan, the fall remained, replaying with each whisper, each sidelong glance. He stared at the stage. Once the symbol of everything he had worked for, now only a reminder of how quickly respect evaporates. He remembered when teachers used to praise him for debate wins, when classmates had cheered his awards. That was before his limp worsened, before his father's absence became obvious, before his presence was defined by what he lacked. Now he was a reminder of failure in a school built on shine. He was not invited into conversations. He was avoided in hallways. He carried silence with him like a shadow. There are moments when watching someone excluded tells you more about a place than any speech could. If you've witnessed that kind of dismissal when the crowd pretends not to see cruelty, it leaves a mark. Sometimes, sharing those memories, even in a small comment, can give others the courage to say, "I've been there too." That's how stories like this connect us. Tyler shifted in his seat a few rows ahead, leaning back casually, tapping on his phone. He didn't need to look at Ethan again. He knew the damage was done. His friends whispered around him, their laughter quieter now but still cruel. The rehearsal dragged. The choir repeated their lines. The principal droned through cues. The room returned to order on the surface, but underneath, Ethan felt the weight of eyes flicking toward him, then away. The dismissal was complete. No one checked if he was hurt. No one asked if he was all right. He might as well have been invisible. Except for the record icon still glowing in the corners of the room. Those videos would spread, not because anyone cared about truth, but because humiliation made better content than dignity. He sat still, holding his crutch upright, back stiff. He told himself to breathe evenly, not to show what was inside. The stage lights reflected off the polished floor, blinding in spots, making him squint. To the rest of them, the fall was over. To him, it had only started. At the far end of the auditorium, unnoticed, a man had entered late. He wore a dark suit, tie loosened, and sat apart from the parents already gathering to watch rehearsal. His posture was stiff, his eyes fixed on the stage. He didn't take out a phone. He didn't clap or whisper. He simply watched. Ethan never saw him. What happened that day wasn't about one fall. It was about the way a room full of people chose silence. If you've ever felt that silence cut across you, you'll understand why stories like this matter. Staying close to them, subscribing to hear them through, isn't about numbers or clicks. It's about not letting silence win. The principal's voice closed the session, monotone, already moving to the next order of business. Students shuffled out, still talking, still laughing, some replaying the clip already. Tyler brushed past Ethan without a glance, as if he hadn't done a thing. Ethan stood slowly, adjusted his gown, and followed the stream. He kept his head lowered, though inside his chest, his pulse hammered. Every step echoed the same truth. Here, he wasn't celebrated. Here, he wasn't even counted, but he kept walking. When Ethan left the auditorium, the brightness of the hallway lights seemed harsher than before. The sound of laughter still clung to him, even though the rehearsal had ended. He moved slowly, leaning on his crutch, feeling the uneven weight in every step. Around him, other students passed easily, voices light, jokes floating in the air. He was in the same building as them, yet he lived in a different world. He had not always been the boy to avoid. There was a time when teachers had trusted him to lead group projects, when classmates asked him to explain history essays or solve math problems. He had enjoyed it, being needed, being useful. The limp had always been there, but when his mother was alive, it felt smaller. She had wrapped his days with reminders that he was whole even when others stared. She had walked him into school with her hand steady at his back, the quiet presence that made whispers easier to ignore. Her name was Laura Hale. She worked in community health, not for money, but because she believed people deserved to be seen. She had filled Ethan's evenings with stories and with her own kind of stubborn courage. When illness came, it came fast. The night she died, the bracelet he now carried had been left on his desk with a note. Stand when it matters. He was 12. Since then, silence had been his inheritance. Marcus Hale, his father, tried in his way. But Marcus was not built for small rooms. He was built for boardrooms, for airports, for nights spent reviewing reports while his phone buzzed without pause. He spoke about schedules, not feelings, numbers, not memories. He was CEO of Hale International, and every headline praised his leadership. To the world, he was decisive, powerful, a man who could close billion-dollar deals with a single meeting. To Ethan, he was a figure always leaving. After Laura's funeral, Marcus had promised to be present. But within weeks, travel returned, late dinners returned, empty chairs at school events returned. Ethan stopped asking. When he told his father about being teased, Marcus had said, "Ignore them. People envy strength." It was not envy, it was cruelty. And ignoring did not erase it. At Crestwood Academy, wealth was the currency. It covered walls, polished floors, filled parking lots with imported cars. Ethan had the wealth his name carried it, but he didn't wear it. He didn't brag. He didn't flaunt. Without his mother, and with a father half absent, he carried himself quietly, hoping to move through hallways unnoticed. The limp betrayed him. Students noticed anyway. Tyler Grant noticed most. Tyler was everything Ethan wasn't. Athletic, loud, surrounded. His father was the mayor, his family's name engraved in city plaques, his smile printed on campaign posters. Teachers overlooked his arrogance because power came with his last name. Students gathered around him because being near him meant not being his target. From the first week, Tyler had singled Ethan out. Prince Hale, he called him, mocking, bowing low in the cafeteria. He would tap Ethan's crutch with his sneaker. Not enough to knock him down, just enough to remind him it could happen. He turned Ethan's limp into a joke that circled the entire school within days. By the second year, even friends who once sat with Ethan at lunch had drifted. The risk of being seen next to him was too high. He became the boy eating alone. He learned to keep his eyes on the table, to finish quickly, to disappear before the laughter could start. Some teachers still respected him. Miss Alvarez in choir never ignored him. She praised his voice, the way he could hold a note steady. She sometimes lingered after rehearsal, asking if he was all right. But she couldn't follow him into hallways, and her concern couldn't cover the gaps left by silence elsewhere. The cruelest part was the shift. Ethan remembered when he had once been the bright one, when applause had followed him after competitions. Losing that was worse than never having it. Being treated as if he no longer existed, as if his only identity was his weakness, was heavier than the crutch itself. At home, the silence wasn't easier. The Hale house was wide, glass and steel, designed to impress. Staff moved quietly through rooms, polite but distant. Meals were often alone. Marcus would call late at night from some hotel, asking if school was fine. Ethan learned to answer, "Yes, it's fine." It was easier than explaining how every hallway felt like walking through fire. He stored his report cards neatly in his desk drawer, though Marcus rarely asked for them. He wrote down goals his mother once helped him set, though few of them seemed possible now. He kept her bracelet near, a small circle of metal that steadied him when nothing else could. The injustice wasn't only in the words of bullies. It was in the way the school allowed it to continue, the way teachers looked away, the way friends drifted, the way silence became permission. It was in the way his father's power meant nothing in the one place Ethan needed protection most. There were days he imagined what it would feel like to walk across that stage at graduation, to hear his name called, to stand tall in front of those who had spent years pushing him down. That dream carried him through long nights, but every time Tyler shoved him in a hallway, or laughter followed him out of class, it felt further away. He had once told himself he would prove them wrong by excelling, by being undeniable. But he learned that excellence was not enough when people decided you were less. His awards didn't silence the whispers. His grades didn't erase the smirks. He lived in a school where status was armor, and his name, though powerful outside, left him bare inside. He was a CEO's son, yet he felt like the poorest one in the room. Walking home after rehearsal that day, he heard echoes of the laughter in every step. The city around him hummed, cars honked, neon lights blinked, but inside, he was back on that stage, crawling for his crutch, while a room chose silence. If you've ever carried that kind of memory, you know it doesn't fade quickly. It lingers. And when someone else shares it, when you realize another person has walked through that same silence, it can be a reminder you're not as invisible as they made you feel. Sometimes hearing those voices is why people choose to follow stories like this one. Ethan reached the gate of the Hale estate. The driver opened the door without words. He climbed inside, sat back, crutch resting against the leather seat. He didn't speak the whole way. When they arrived, the house lights glowed but felt cold. Inside, dinner was set at the long table. Only one place was filled. His father's chair was empty again. He ate alone, silence heavier than the cutlery. Afterward, he carried his plate to the kitchen himself. He went upstairs, opened his desk drawer, and placed the bracelet inside again, careful, like it was fragile. He wrote a single line in his notebook. "I will stand, even if I stand alone." He closed it, turned off the light, and lay in bed. The day replayed, sharper than before. The smirk, the laughter, the silence. He turned on his side, eyes open to the dark ceiling. Sleep did not come easily, and somewhere else in the city that night, a facilities manager who had watched the rehearsal replayed what he'd seen and said nothing. The quiet had too many accomplices. The following week began with the same rhythm as all the others. Monday at Crestwood Academy, Ethan stepped out of the car, the crutch steady in his hand, the strap of his bag cutting into his shoulder. Students moved past him in groups, voices overlapping with plans, jokes, weekend stories. None included him. The limp was always the first thing people saw. It wasn't new. But Tyler Grant had a way of turning it into spectacle. "Careful, Prince Hale. Don't trip on the gravel." His crew laughed. Phones rose instantly, ready to catch any stumble. Ethan kept walking, eyes forward. His silence gave them more room, but speaking would have fed them too. By lunch, it had escalated. Because the administration required seniors to wear their gowns for that day's on-stage blocking rehearsal, Ethan was still in his robe when he chose a corner table, away from the crowd, where he could eat quickly. Tyler's friends slid past, one of them bumping the edge of the table so his tray rattled. Juice spilled, soaking the gown's cuff. The boys laughed, slapped each other's shoulders, kept walking. A teacher passed, glanced, then kept moving. Ethan wiped the spill with napkins, jaw tight. At another table, Miss Alvarez noticed. She started to rise, then stopped when she caught the eyes of other staff nearby. They had seen it. None moved. Ethan finished quickly, stood, carried his tray to the return bin. Behind him, whispers followed. "Can't even hold a tray. Daddy should hire him an assistant." He forced his shoulders straight, even as his chest burned. After lunch, he opened his locker to find his crutch leaning against the wall, snapped clean in the middle. Someone had replaced it with a broom handle, propped upright as a joke. His stomach dropped. He gripped the broom, felt the splinters. Around him, laughter rose. Tyler stood nearby, arms crossed, grin sharp. "What's the matter, Hale?" "New model. Lighter, flexible. Better than the old one." The hallway roared. Ethan stood frozen. He wanted to scream, to swing the broom across Tyler's smirk, but his mother's words pressed against his memory. "Stand when it matters." He wasn't sure this counted. He felt his throat tighten as he turned, shoved the broom back, and walked unevenly toward the nurse's office to request a spare. By evening, his hand was raw from gripping the replacement crutch. At home, he ate quietly again, his father absent again. He wrote another line in his notebook. "They want me to break before I stand." The days blurred together, each carrying a new humiliation. In gym class, Tyler's crew tripped him during drills, laughing when he fell into the mat. During choir practice, someone mimicked his limp, dragging their foot in exaggerated rhythm. Students laughed softly, pretending it was unrelated. Ethan kept his eyes fixed on the sheet music. Miss Alvarez's gaze lingered on him. She didn't scold. The boy's authority in Crestwood had limits when it came to the mayor's son. But she noticed. Once, after practice, she handed Ethan a water bottle and said quietly, "You have more composure than most adults." He nodded, unable to answer, but it was getting harder to hold silence. Each humiliation left a mark. The real breaking point came on Friday. The cafeteria was crowded, noise bouncing off the polished walls. Ethan carried his tray carefully, eyes low. Tyler blocked the path. "Show us how you walk when Daddy's not here to catch you." His friend smirked. Connor, tall and broad, swiped the crutch from Ethan's hand. He lifted it high like a trophy. "Who wants it?" The cafeteria erupted. Phones rose, record icons glowing. Ethan froze. His tray tilted, crashing to the floor. Food scattered. Milk splashed across his gown. Laughter roared, chants starting. "Fall, fall, fall." Tyler shoved him hard. Ethan stumbled, arms flailing, body folding without support. His chest hit the edge of a table, knocking breath from his lungs. The cafeteria roared louder. He looked up through blurred eyes and saw only amusement. Students leaning over tables, eager for a show. Some laughed loudly, others smiled nervously, afraid to be next if they stayed silent. None stepped forward. Connor waved the crutch again, his grin wide. "Who wants it?" Going once, going twice. That was when a voice cut through. Not loud, but firm. "Put it down." The cafeteria stilled for a second. It was Jordan Miles, a scholarship student who rarely spoke. He stood at the far table, hands steady, eyes locked on Connor. Connor laughed, tossed the crutch to the ground with a clatter, and leaned back. "Relax, hero. Just having fun." But the word fun hung heavy in the air. Phones still recorded. Jordan's voice, though quiet, had broken the rhythm of cruelty. Ethan picked up the crutch, hand trembling. He met Jordan's eyes for a second. No words passed, only the recognition that someone, for once, had chosen not to look away. The cafeteria returned to noise, but something small had shifted. Ethan carried his tray to the return bin, clothes wet with milk, heart racing. He sat in the corner, wiped his shirt, tried to steady his breath. At another table, Jordan ate silently, ignoring the whispers that now trailed him. Tyler muttered something, but his smirk had dimmed slightly. For the first time, Ethan felt the possibility that silence might not be permanent. That night, Ethan walked into his empty house, shoes echoing across marble floors. He left his bag on the chair, climbed the stairs, and sat at his desk. He opened his notebook, stared at the blank page, then wrote, "When someone stands, even quietly, silence breaks." He placed his mother's bracelet beside the page. In another part of the city, Marcus Hale was still at the office. His phone buzzed with messages from investors. He read the numbers, replied quickly, then glanced at the clock. Ethan's onstage blocking was scheduled for Monday. He hesitated for a second, then returned to his report. If you've ever seen someone pushed into the ground while everyone else stood by, you know how deep that memory cuts. Sometimes telling those memories out loud, leaving your mark in a conversation, is the only way to remind yourself they didn't erase you completely. That's why stories like this ask for voices, not silence. The week ended, with Ethan lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The humiliations blurred together, the broom in his locker, the milk on his gown, the chants echoing. But one moment stood out. Jordan's voice. Quiet, firm, refusing to laugh. It was enough to remind him that even in a room full of silence, one sound could change the balance. He closed his eyes, holding his mother's bracelet, and whispered into the dark, "I'll find my way to stand." Monday, final rehearsal in the auditorium. The hall had been dressed for blocking. Rows of chairs stretched across the polished floor. A stage was set with banners, the Crestwood Academy crest in deep navy, gold trim catching the light. Teachers clipped microphones to collars, calling names, adjusting schedules. Students moved in lines, some restless, some excited, all waiting for the moment their names would be read. Ethan entered quietly, robe pressed, crutch balanced. His chest tightened the moment he saw the stage. It was the same place where he had fallen days earlier, the same floor where laughter had risen like a wave. He told himself to keep breathing, one step, then another. The room buzzed with chatter until Tyler's voice carried. "Look who's back. Careful this time." His friends snickered. The words weren't loud enough for staff to intervene, but they reached Ethan clearly. He walked on, shoulders stiff. He took his seat in the second row. Around him, conversations continued as if he weren't there. Students leaned across him to talk to one another, ignoring his presence entirely. The exclusion wasn't new, but here, under the bright lights, it burned sharper. The principal stepped up to the podium. "We'll begin the order. Please move when your name is called." His tone was measured, detached, as if rehearsals were only logistics. Names rolled out, one by one. Students crossed the stage, shook hands, descended. Applause scattered, light and polite. Then came Ethan Hale. He rose carefully, gripping his crutch. The room hushed, but not with respect, with anticipation. Phones tilted up, ready. Tyler shifted in his seat, smirk already forming. Ethan tapped forward, each step echoing louder than the last. He focused on the podium, the handshake he was supposed to give. But halfway across, Tyler's foot shot out again. The trip wasn't subtle. Ethan stumbled forward, a stack of rehearsal programs he'd been asked to carry slipping from his arm, scattering across the stage like cards. A ripple of laughter spread, some sharp, some muffled, but unmistakable. "Careful," someone called. "Round 2. Ethan froze, heart pounding, vision blurring. He bent to gather the scattered papers, fingers trembling. No one moved to help. Teachers stood still. The principal adjusted his glasses, clearing his throat. "Let's stay focused, please. Continue, Mr. Hale." The words cut colder than the laughter. Not sympathy. Not defense. Only order. Ethan straightened slowly, clutching the papers to his chest. He forced himself forward, shook the principal's hand with a grip that barely held, then descended the stairs. Tyler whispered something as he passed. Ethan didn't catch it, but the grin told him enough. He returned to his seat, face burning, chest tight. The rehearsal moved on as if nothing had happened. Later, during a break, Ethan sat in the corner of the auditorium, away from the crowd. He wiped his forehead, the weight of humiliation pressing harder than fatigue. Jordan Miles approached quietly, water bottle in hand. He sat across. "You don't deserve that," he said. His voice was steady, not pitying. Ethan looked at him, uncertain. "Doesn't matter what I deserve. No one's going to stop him." Jordan's gaze didn't waver. "Not true." "Someone will." The words hung between them. Ethan wanted to believe them, but the memory of the stage pressed back. Still, he felt something shift and anchor, small but real. That afternoon, Ethan sat alone again after the hall emptied. Chairs stacked, lights dimmed. The stage loomed, empty now, but heavy with memory. He tapped his crutch softly against the wood floor. He thought of his mother, her voice in his head. "Stand when it matters." He whispered back into the silence. "When does it matter?" No answer came, only the echo of his own voice. The injustice wasn't just in Tyler's foot, or the laughter. It was in the way the adults chose quiet. It was in the way the principal's tone dismissed him like a minor inconvenience. It was in the way peers treated him as background, irrelevant in a room where everyone else was preparing to be celebrated. He had been one of the brightest once, the irreplaceable one. Now he was reduced to the stumble, the limp, the silence. At home that night, Marcus Hale returned late. Ethan sat at the table, food cold, untouched. Marcus loosened his tie, poured himself a drink. "How was rehearsal?" he asked. Eyes still on his phone. Ethan hesitated. "It was fine." Marcus nodded, already scrolling. "Good. The ceremony's next week. It's important. I'm reviewing flights." The word stung. Ethan said nothing. He excused himself, went upstairs, and wrote in his notebook, "They erase me in public, and my father doesn't even see it." He closed the book, placed the bracelet on top, and turned off the light. If you've ever sat through a moment where someone's pain was brushed aside as an inconvenience, you know the weight it leaves. Speaking about those moments can be difficult, but it can also free others to share. If this story reminds you of something, leaving your voice where others can hear it can be that freedom. Tuesday morning, Ethan walked into the office expecting nothing. He had survived the night with his notebook and his mother's bracelet, telling himself to endure one more week. But when the secretary handed him an envelope stamped with the principal's signature, the floor shifted under him. Inside, a suspension notice. The explanation was brief, typed in detached words: disruptive conduct during rehearsal. He stared at the page. His hands trembled, not from anger but disbelief. He had been tripped, mocked, laughed at, and now the blame was his. The report insinuated that his dropped papers had disrupted the program flow. When he raised his eyes, the secretary didn't meet them. "You'll need to stay home tomorrow. The principal says you can return Thursday." Her tone was flat, rehearsed, the kind that closed doors. He walked out, the crutch echoing against the tile. Tyler leaned casually against a locker in the hallway, reading something on his phone. He looked up, grin curling. "Told you, Hale. Doesn't matter what happens. They'll always believe me." The words landed colder than the paper in Ethan's hand. He didn't answer. He limped down the hall, clutching the suspension letter. At home, the silence was thicker than usual. Marcus wasn't there, again. Dinner sat untouched. Ethan climbed to his room, shut the door, and sat at his desk. He unfolded the letter, smoothed it flat, and stared. His chest ached. His notebook lay open. Last week's line, still written in sharp ink: "They erase me in public, and my father doesn't even see it." He dropped the pen. For the first time, he let his head fall into his hands. He thought of his mother. What would she tell him now? That strength was standing. How, when standing, only earned more humiliation? He whispered into the empty room, "I can't do this anymore." The words stayed in the air, heavy. Final. Wednesday. Suspension day. The house felt cavernous. He sat by the window, watching other kids walk past on their way to school, laughing, careless. He pressed his mother's bracelet into his palm until the edges cut his skin. Late in the afternoon, a knock came at the door. He opened it to find Miss Alvarez. She stood with her bag over her shoulder, hair pulled back, expression steady. "Can I come in?" she asked. He nodded. She stepped inside, placed her bag on the counter, and pulled out her phone. "I was there. I saw what happened. I recorded part of it." She tapped the screen. The video played. Tyler's foot shooting out. Ethan stumbling. Papers scattering. Laughter. The principal's dismissal. The room silent except for the cruelty. Ethan felt his throat close. Seeing it from the outside was worse than living it. But it was also proof. "I shouldn't have stayed quiet," Miss Alvarez said quietly. "But this matters. You don't have to keep carrying it alone." Ethan shook his head. "Even if I show it, no one will care. They'll still believe him. He's the mayor's son." Miss Alvarez's gaze didn't shift. "Maybe, but maybe not. You won't know until you stop letting them write the story for you." The words hit harder than Tyler's shove. He turned away, staring at the dark window. "What if I fail?" he asked, voice low. Miss Alvarez stepped closer. "Then you fail knowing you chose to stand. That's different than being silenced." She set the phone on the table. Video paused at the moment Tyler's foot stretched across the stage. "If you want it, I'll send this to you and to someone who can help you make sure it's seen." He nodded once. That night, Ethan forwarded the file to Jordan, who knew the AV team and how to cast to the auditorium's projector. Miss Alvarez messaged the AV lead to be ready, in case students needed to display a sanctioned clip. Ethan opened his notebook again. Slowly, he wrote, "If I stay silent, they win twice." He set the pen down, picked up the bracelet, and held it to his chest. His pulse steadied. He whispered, "I'll stand." Thursday, he returned to school. Whispers followed him instantly, suspended for tripping himself. Principal had to discipline him. "Did you see the video?" "No, not that one. The edited one Tyler's friends posted." Ethan walked past without slowing. He knew their words. He had lived inside them for years. But something was different now. He had proof. He had a choice. During choir practice, Jordan caught his eye. He didn't smile, didn't speak, but gave a single nod. It was enough. That evening, Ethan sat across from his father for once. Marcus had come home early, tie still on, briefcase at his side. He poured a drink, sat at the table, and finally asked, "You're quiet. Something wrong?" Ethan stared at him. He thought of the suspension letter in his bag, of the laughter in the hall, of the video on Miss Alvarez's phone. He wanted to tell him everything, but Marcus's eyes drifted back to the screen. Ethan swallowed the words, "Nothing." Marcus nodded, distracted. Big week coming up. Ethan rose, left the table, and went upstairs. He didn't need his father's attention anymore. He would find his own way. If you've ever carried proof of something that everyone else tried to deny, you know the weight of that moment. Deciding what to do with it can feel impossible. Sharing it, using it can be terrifying. But it can also be the one step that changes everything. That night, Ethan stood by his window, city lights stretching out. He clenched his mother's bracelet, whispered into the night, "Graduation. That's when I'll stand." Graduation morning, Crestwood Auditorium. Skies clear and air sharp. Families filled the hall in formal clothes, pearls flashing, suits pressed. Photographers lined the walls, tripods adjusted, cameras ready. The stage gleamed under polished lights. Banners draped high, gold against navy. Ethan stood in the wings, robe neat, cap fitted, crutch in hand. His palms were damp. Around him, students whispered, laughed, checked phones. Tyler moved through the crowd like it was his stage, shoulders loose, smile wide. He clapped one boy on the back, leaned close to another with a joke, laughter trailing him like a shadow. From where he stood, Ethan could see the front rows. City officials, donors, faculty. The mayor sat upright, face smooth, sun at his side, and then his eyes caught a figure near the back, apart from the noise. Marcus Hale, his father. Suit pressed, tie sharp, posture tense, eyes locked on the stage. Ethan's chest tightened. He looked away before Marcus could see. The principal stepped to the podium, voice amplified. "Welcome to the Crestwood Academy Commencement." Applause rippled. Cameras flashed. "Today, we honor the achievements of our graduates." Names began. Students crossed the stage, handshakes exchanged, applause polite. When Tyler's name was called, the room erupted louder than usual. He shook hands with exaggerated flair, winked at the crowd, basked in the noise. Ethan's stomach turned. Then, Ethan. Hale. The air shifted. Phones rose, already recording. Whispers ticked across the rows. "Watch this. Here it comes." Ethan stepped forward, crutch tapping steady. He felt every eye track him. Halfway across the stage, Tyler stuck his foot out again. This time Ethan saw it coming. His crutch swung just enough to avoid it. He didn't fall. A single program, jostled by the movement, fluttered from a front row seat to the floor. Laughter exploded anyway. "Round 3, someone shouted. Ethan froze. The principal's voice cut in, cold, clipped. "Mr. Hale, please collect yourself and move along." The room buzzed. Phones caught every second. Tyler leaned back, grin wide, whispering to his friends. Ethan bent as if to pick up the fallen program, then stopped. His chest pounded. His mother's words echoed, "Stand when it matters." He let the program lie, gripped the crutch, turned toward the microphone. "I've been silent long enough." The auditorium hushed. Teachers shifted, alarmed. The principal frowned, tapping the mic. "Mr. Hale, please." "No." Ethan's voice was sharp, dry, cutting through. "Every day here I've been tripped, shoved, laughed at. Not once did anyone stop it. Not once did anyone say it was wrong. And when I was humiliated on this very stage, I was suspended for it." Gasps rippled. Phones zoomed closer. Tyler's smirk faltered. The principal stiffened. "This is not the time. It's the only time," Ethan said. His voice wavered, then steadied. "Because this is supposed to be the day we're recognized for who we are. And I want to be recognized as more than the boy you all decided to erase." Silence spread heavy, broken only by the bright hum of the lights. Then a voice cut in from the back. Jordan Miles, standing tall, holding his phone ready. "He's telling the truth, and we can prove it." The AV screen behind the stage flickered on miss. Alvarez had signaled the booth, and the video filled the wall. Tyler's foot shooting out, Ethan stumbling. Laughter. The principal's dismissal. The auditorium erupted. Students shouted. Parents leaned forward. The mayor's face flushed red. Tyler shot to his feet, shouting, "That's fake." "No, it's not," Jordan said firmly. "We all saw it. Now everyone else does too." The principal sputtered. "This is highly inappropriate," but the crowd was no longer with him. A low chant began, then rolled forward. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" Ethan gripped his crutch, chest tight. He lifted his head. For the first time, he wasn't shrinking. "I'm not asking for applause," he said, voice strong now. "I'm asking you to remember that silence is not neutral. When you look away, you take a side." Applause broke, then surged, parents rising, students rising, until the auditorium thundered. Tyler's smirk was gone, replaced with fear. His father's jaw tightened, face pale. On the stage, Ethan stood tall. For once, not the crippled prince, not the boy erased, but someone who refused to disappear. From the back row, Marcus Hale rose. For years he had watched his son from a distance, absent behind glass offices and closed doors. Now he saw him standing, steady, voice carrying through the hall. His chest tightened, eyes burning. He clapped loud, firm, steady. The sound spread, row by row. The room followed. Ethan met his father's eyes. For the first time, he didn't look away. If you've ever seen a room turn from silence to truth, you know it can change everything. Sometimes, staying close to stories like these, letting them reach you, is why people choose to keep following along. It's not about numbers. It's about knowing the quietest voice can shake the loudest room. The ceremony stumbled forward after that, but the balance had shifted. Tyler sat stiff, face pale. His father avoided every glance. Teachers looked shaken, whispers cutting across rows. When the last name was called, applause rose again, but nothing matched the moment when Ethan Hale chose to stand. The next morning, emergency assembly. The auditorium was filled again this time, not for celebration but for consequence. At the district's insistence after the video spread overnight, the principal stood at the podium, papers trembling in his hand, voice tight. Rows of students sat forward, phones hidden in laps, recording. Parents filled the back, their faces pale with expectation. At the front, Tyler and his friends shifted. Their suits looked pressed, but their shoulders were hunched, swagger gone. The mayor sat behind them, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the floor. The principal cleared his throat. After review of evidence provided to the school and district, it is clear that the altercation on stage was not instigated by Ethan Hale. The responsibility lies with Tyler Grant and his peers. Gasps, then applause. Teachers, who had once looked away now, clapped lightly. The principal turned, eyes sharp. Tyler, Connor, you will apologize. Now. Tyler swallowed hard. Stood, voice cracking. I'm sorry. To Ethan. I shouldn't have tripped you, mocked you. I shouldn't have. His words stumbled. His father's glare forced the rest out. You didn't deserve that. Connor followed, jaw clenched, muttering an apology that barely carried. But Ethan, seated quietly in the second row, didn't nod. He didn't smile. He rose slowly, steady on his crutch, and turned not to them, but to the room. Don't just apologize to me. Apologize to everyone you laughed at. Everyone you made small, when you thought no one would stand against you. The room hushed. Tyler's lips trembled. Connor's eyes darted away. But slowly, Tyler turned to the crowd, voice shaking. I'm sorry, to all of you. The auditorium erupted. Students clapped, cheered. Some even cried. It wasn't forgiveness. It was recognition that power had shifted. Later that night, Ethan sat in the Hale penthouse. The city skyline glowed beyond the glass, but for once he wasn't looking out. He sat on the couch, his crutch resting against the arm, his gown folded neatly beside him. Marcus entered quietly, jacket off, tie loose. He lowered himself onto the couch next to his son. For a long moment he said nothing. The silence wasn't the old absence. It was presence, heavy and real. Finally, Marcus spoke, voice low, breaking at the edges. Your mother always said someone would help you stand tall. I thought she meant me. I was wrong. Ethan looked at him, eyes steady. She was right. But I didn't need saving. I needed someone to see me. Marcus's chest tightened. He reached out, placed his arm around his son's shoulders. No words, no promises, just presence. For the first time, Ethan let himself lean into it. They sat like that, father and son, no boardrooms, no headlines, only silence filled with meaning. The video from graduation spread beyond the school. Clips replayed online. Ethan's words at the microphone. Jordan's recording projected on the wall. The crowd chanting justice. Headlines called it, Courage at Crestwood. Parents shared it. Students repeated it. Strangers saw themselves in it. But the real shift wasn't on screens. It was in the way students looked at Ethan the next week. No longer invisible. No longer erased. Some offered nods. Others whispered thanks. Even silence had changed. It wasn't dismissal anymore. It was respect. If you've ever been mocked, if you've ever been pushed aside, you know how heavy that silence can feel. But you also know what it means when silence finally breaks. Keeping close to stories like this, subscribing so you don't miss them, isn't just about following. It's about remembering that courage spreads when voices don't disappear. The last night before leaving Crestwood, Ethan opened his notebook. He flipped past pages filled with anger, grief, loneliness. He found the line he had written weeks ago. I will stand, even if I stand alone. He took his pen and added beneath it, I stood, and I wasn't alone. He closed the book, placed his mother's bracelet on top, and turned off the light. They mocked a boy for his limp. They tried to erase him with laughter. They thought silence would keep him small. But when the day came, he stood, and in standing, he reminded everyone that the calmest move can shake the loudest room. And for every student who feels unseen, for every child carrying silence like a shadow, that truth remains. Sometimes the strongest voice isn't the one that shouts. It's the one that refuses to disappear.